We are here today on Wednesday, October 8th in our second series for biosecurity and traceability, bolstering and prevention of our foreign animal diseases in Hawaii and our unique risk and environment. So again, we have our project team with Meli Oshiro and me, Dr. Gabrielle Acey, and then we have UN Bastamante and Dr. Tomas Pesnik. And here we are. Going forward, today we're going to be talking about a premise identification number. And this is a number that is a location identifier. So a premise identification number is a unique code that is permanently assigned to a single physical location. It also is known as a PIN. It allows for animal health officials to quickly and precisely identify where animals are being held. And it is primarily used, but can be used for a multitude of things. But in the event of an animal health or food safety emergency, and in the event of an outbreak, the PIN or the premise identification number will allow producers to be notified if they are in an area of regulatory control. And this also aids in speeding up response. These numbers can also be used just for traceability in general and tracking animals as they go either to slaughter or to shows and to market as well. It's primarily a really valuable tool when requesting movement permits as well. You can link test results to them. So a lot of times when I'm sending off results to Iowa State or other places, I will be requested if I want to put a pin in with that. And one of the benefits to it, and Tom, you can correct me with this, but I believe when I assign a pin to a test number, the person whose pin that is also has direct access to that answer to the answer. Sorry, I'm being harassed by an animal here. To the outcome of those test results as well, right?
No, that's not 100% true. There might be some places where that is the case. But for example, so I do put on all my submission forms when I send diagnostics into the lab, I do put the PIN number. And largely that's because that's more so it's an identifier. It'll kind of help them find what state it's in. So what's important there is or so if I want to copy somebody, I have to actually put their email information in so that they get a copy as well. But I believe that might be how they report the state results. So there's certain diseases that if they're positive are reportable, even if they're not the bad ones like ASF, right? But they're reportable just because the state requires that if that's going on, they want to know about it and where it's at. And so I believe that helps link it to the state identify or state information, but it does not on at least up in Nebraska where we're at, it does not get it does not link them directly to the client.
Okay, got it. That was something I was asked last time I sent something to Iowa, and I thought that was interesting. So I didn't know if that was a common thing or not. It was the first time I'd been asked that. So what will you need to sign up for a PIN number? A pretty common information is the name of your entity or company, contact information of the owner or the individual, and then type of operation that you have, street address, city, state, zip code, phone number. And then some states have an optional category for longitude and latitude numbers, and that can just be because you might have animals housed in a slightly different location than what your actual physical street address is. And then most states request the species of livestock on site. However, the number of livestock that is on the premise is not a requirement. And so that is kind of a point of interest, just so that you guys are aware. They're not actually looking for the number, just the type of animals that you have in on the property and whatnot to apply for one of these. So applying for one of these is pretty easy. It's actually just an online fillable form. And up here at the top, you can see that you have sign me up for a state and national PIN. And that is the PIN that we're going to recommend that you guys go ahead and apply for, as opposed to just the state PIN only. And that is mainly set as everything links in with AgView and all the other steps going forward. You have both the state and the federal signed up in one. And this form is a 2-page document. So you have the first page here, and then there is a second page, but it's a fillable PDF. And then once this form is filled out, we're going to recommend that we're going to have you email it to this email here. And then we're actually going to ask that you CC us on it or CC you in on it as well, and put in the subject line the ship enrollment, copying your team. And the reason for that is just that we're trying to streamline things for everybody so that we can keep tabs on this going forward, since we are doing this as part of a project and hopefully getting a lot of people to participate in it. If we're having multiple producers participate in this at once, we're just going to try to keep all of the paperwork in line and moving forward so that we can all keep tabs on it and know that we're moving forward. And I will throw in this information into the chat too, so that you guys can all just click on that and directly copy and fill out as you go. So pretty simple as you go forward with it. And then once you have your PIN number, you can actually check it on, verify it on the Pork Checkoff website. I don't know if anyone's ever used the Pork Checkoff website. It's a fairly good website that just gives general information for a lot of basic things. The PIN numbers is one of them. It also can go over some diseases and has some biosecurity practices and other things on there as well. And one of the things that this has on here is you can look up your PIN number, and then it also helps you with printing out, if you want to print out some barcode labels and things like that. Helpful for if you're doing submissions, or if you need anything that involves your PIN number on it, or if you just have really bad handwriting like me and your staff never allow you to actually write anything, then something that prints off a barcode label so you don't have to worry about the numbers and whatnot being wrong. It's something that is useful from that standpoint as well. But that's something that you can actually verify to make sure that your PIN number is up to date and working properly. And then you can have, once you have that USDA official premise identification number, you can also order PIN tags. And these are customizable tags that are on farm management. So you can use them if anyone has, I don't know if anyone has electronic tracking systems or online systems where they actually track all their individual animals and they record their health records. But if so, you can use the PIN tags for that. And then you can also track them when they're going either to harvest or market, or going out and doing shows, things like that. And they can also be used for treatment records, and they're something that is required for the Pork Quality Assurance Plus. So very useful from that standpoint. Mele was working, I believe, at one point to try to get us some free PIN tags. Mele, do you want to comment on if we're going to be able to get people some tags?
I think it's actually the RFDs, electronic identification readers that they were working with, and it was for show and
Okay.
marketing. Yeah, what do you call processing unit? So yeah, it's a different program that they're doing, and it wasn't for the pin tags, but it was for the RFIDs readers.
It was for the RFID tags. Okay. And the readers. Okay. So either way, the PIN tags are fairly economical to get and can be used for a variety of uses as well. So the biggest thing is that this can enhance, it just really enhances traceability with all of the breeding stock and then the swine as well, and demonstrates the freedom of being able to have this traceability, and supports a competitiveness with all of our swine, and knowing where they're going, where they're coming from, and where they're going to, because you're able to actually log these animals as they go, and improves a lot of our surveillance programs with everything. And then there's 3 suppliers that you can actually order the tags from. Destron, Allflex, and Ytex. And you do have to have your PIN number, and those will actually be on the tags themselves when you order them, and then they arrive. So you order them directly, and they come directly to your facility, so you're not going through a third party or anything like that. And you can, I believe you can get them in electronic tracking systems now, right? Tom, you might know more about that.
Yeah, you could also use so you're saying in the electronic systems like for RFID, or you're saying
I think you can get them comboed, right? Where you can have them as an RFID and a pin tag,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
So
you can
so
do
yeah, so
both.
like in that picture there, you see the inside of the tag, and on the inside of that tag, that's
That's the
actually
RFID.
yeah, that's the RFID. That identifies that pig. That's the only number anywhere in the US that'll have that number, and that's in that pig. So it's a what is that? It's like 369, 15 digits long. So apparently that goes a long, long ways. And then on the other side, if you looked at the flip side, it'll be more of a panel, or could be just another button, but more solid. And on there, they can actually print on the are your actually premise ID number. So the premise ID identifies uh, your uh, your facility, whereas that inside part there with the electronic that can go with it, that identifies the pig at your facility.
So those are kind of the big uses with it. And I think
What would be the method by which let's say somebody doesn't know if they don't remember if they have a premise ID number, or they don't remember their premise ID number, how where would they go from there?
That would, do we have?
my understanding, we can look that up with the state, right?
Yeah, I think I see Dr. Heskett on here because I believe it's with their office that you can check because that's where these forms go.
I think something that we could do for the ones they're interested or don't remember the premises ID, we can collect or you know your email and we can just forward to the Department of Agriculture and maybe that we could just communicate if it's that an option. But yeah, personally, can contact directly too.
Yeah, definitely.
It sounded like a great idea, as we can look it up, but I can't look it up now.
Yeah, so if you're wondering if you do have a premise identification for your operation, send your contact and your name to either you or myself, and then we can compile a list.
Yeah. I guess one of the questions and part part to get to know all of you, if you feel comfortable, like who of you has already using or are familiar with those premises pin IDs? You can just, raise your hand or comment something in the chat, and that we can just have a overall idea, how many of us we're already using this system, how many of us we need to just, start getting familiar with the system, and we kind of like, but feel free to share.
Kim, was that thumbs
Caitlin?
up because you are?
Oh yeah, I thought Keelan did. Yeah. Well, I think it would be worth verifying with several people to see if they actually have it. I because I thought Travis had told me that if you have a registered swine facility, you have to have a premise ID. Is that correct?
I don't think that's the correct. I know some people. I can't even see who's on the call, but we do have some people on the call. I'm sure that have a pin. We as a lab, when we come out and we do surveillance testing, if we ever get a suspect result that we have to forward on or do anything of that nature, we have to create a pin for it. So we might have created pins for that purpose, but I don't think we have any other requirement for it.
Thank you, Travis. You know,
Yeah.
it's the biggest reason that everything really starts in and around this is, you know, and I'll have some a few things to show you guys here a little bit later that'll tie into that, is whether it's for a domestic disease or for these foreign animal diseases that we talked about the first time, or on the first session. Uh, when we have those, we need an identifier to be able to find where that's at. So if and then it also allows us for traceback. And so let's say Kaylin sells a pig to someone else on the call, and her pig is identified with the premise ID number of Island Farms. Then let's say that pig is sold to somebody else. That pig, they decide, hey, we decided we're going to butcher it. It goes to market, and if it's at the federal plant, there's kind of routine sampling that can go on to test for some of our domestic diseases that are federally regulated, like brucellosis, like pseudorabies, et cetera. Or if an outbreak would happen of ASF, and somebody found that pig laying dead, then what they would be able to do is if it was fresh enough, they would be able to see the tattoo or preferably a pin tag, which could last a really long time, and then be able to say, okay, we have this individual identifier. Kaylin, how long ago did you sell this pig? Who did you sell it to? I mean, trying to trace down so that we can stop these things as quickly as possible. The biggest thing and it's a huge concern up here on the mainland, is there's so many shipments that happen across the country on a given day. I always forget the numbers, but there's thousands and thousands of pigs on the road right now. Right now in the US, and it's late at night, but there's pigs that are moving across the US to different places to feed out, to different places because they're being sold for breeding stock, etc. And so being able to stop things and identify the point contact of where the infection happened and prevent further spread is just tremendously important. So that's why there's so much emphasis on this. Now, back in the days where we had pseudorabies, and I know we still have it in our feral in our wild pigs. Even up here, there's some of that. And so, but then back in those days, I don't know what they did in Hawaii, but we actually had, each farm actually still had a code. It was more simple. It was like NE15 or NE35. And that stood for Nebraska, and then whatever farm number. And then those really went away once the premise ID came out, because then now I have a federalized something similar across every single state that identifies back to that farm. So as we go through further sessions here, we got 3 more that'll be coming down the line, taking a step by step towards our goal. Really, the premise ID is the very critical first step, and most important. If we don't enroll and let that be known, or that we have that identifier, we can't enroll in the further aspects of the programs that we're really wanting to do.
Go ahead, Gary. I see your hand up.
Doc, to be perfectly frank, my concern with enrolling is that should a disease outbreak occur and they determine that my pigs are in a zip code that even though they might be genetically diverse enough so that there's no chance of cross-contamination or very little chance, they'll be caught up in a dragnet and I will be forced to euthanize my entire population.
Yeah, and indeed you're right. So now if it's a domestic disease, no, that's not the case. And really for that one, again, it's just that there's some reportable diseases in that regard. But yes, there's no question. I mean, it's just like they call it high pathogenic avian influenza that we have up here in the chickens. So in that case, it's deadly to chickens like African swine fever is to pigs, and they will die. And maybe there's a 0.5% of a large, 10,000 head chicken barn that would survive that, but because of its massive infectiousness and so forth, they do that, and at this time they're continuing that they actually get an indemnity. They get a payment there, and that's basically figured out on some kind of matrix, which I'm not privy to. But basically, what ends up happening, this is the interesting thing with high path avian influenza is the indemnity that you get paid per chicken starts when you report, and they're going to die. I mean, they are going to die. And so that's really not with every foreign animal disease, but with the main ones, with African swine fever and classical swine fever. If your pigs contract that, Gary, they are going to die. And so what the whole goal is, hey, I can get some indemnity, at least pay for it, and then prevent this spread from hitting the entire island more than anything else. But you're not wrong. Is by being associated with that, and if that pig is diagnosed with it, actually, if that pig is diagnosed with it, Gary, regardless of if it has a PIN identifier on it or not, by bringing it there and then diagnosing that it was actually African swine fever, that would be the clincher. That yeah, that's when the location is identified, and then basically the state sets up what we call a buffer area, which would say that, hey, we're going to surround this area, and that's where that whole permitting thing ends up happening. Even if you don't have African swine fever, you're going to be limited in being able to move pigs because they're worried about, has there been already cross contamination.
Doc, I appreciate everything you're saying, and with all due respect, I question whether the paradigm under which we're operating is creating a susceptibility to a lot of infections, and that there might be another way of doing it, which will breed pigs that have a greater immunity and less susceptibility to contracting some of these things.
Yeah, and exactly. In the meantime, while we're keeping our fingers crossed that we don't get African swine fever or something like that, but there's actually, PRRS is the scourge up here, costing billions, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, probably closer to $1 billion a year. And there's actually a couple different things that are going on with PRRS. One, we're still wishing we could find the magic vaccine, but we don't have them. But then secondly would be one company, Pig Improvement Company, has developed a gene deletion, which that to some people that it depends. Does that feel good to me, or does that not feel good to me? As far as that makes those pigs tolerate PRRS much better, and saves a lot of pigs, but it hasn't been approved to go into market channels at this point in time. So we have to go through all the basically seeing what the end customer is going to want, and one way or another. So we've got that, and then on top of that, those that don't like that, what we might call a GMO it's type of thing. I know at least of one big genetics company that what they're doing is they also have commercial pigs, and what they're doing is they're tracking the pigs that when they contract PRRS and they take those pigs all the way to market, they actually are using pin tags. They're actually or beyond the premise ID, they're using the RFID, the individual, so they know exactly which pig that is. Okay. And so then what they do is they tally the death loss, and they backtrack that to the moms and the dads that created those pigs, and they're slowly selecting for pigs that have survived and survived well. And so it's really kind of an interesting thing, right up the alley of what you're saying. The other, then obviously be deeper than that, and that's really going into the human profession or into the human world, is starting to look at how we eat, how our environment is. Are we getting enough daily sunlight? Are we getting exercise? Do we have, can we reduce our stress? Really, those things apply exactly to our pigs and making them more resilient, like what you're saying. And so how we feed our pigs, how are they exposed to sunlight? That's one advantage that we have in Hawaii that a lot of the pigs up here don't get, is they get that sunlight. So all those things that basically those pigs developed through over thousands of years are important, because they use those sources of information, I guess, if you call it, whether it's sunlight or if it's soil or so whatever, to basically become a robust animal. And we've lost some of that through some selective breeding.
Doc, come and visit. I've got 400 pigs out in the open. No antiparasitics, no vaccines, no antibiotics, zero mortality.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And getting the whole industry to move to something like that. Obviously we've created quite a beast up here, with the number of pigs that we have, and the methods we have to raise them. It's a ship that's I think it'll turn, Gary, similar to what you've done. You've turned your ship, and are raising pigs that way, and that's pretty cool. So yeah, absolutely planning on making a visit when I'm down.
Thank you for taking my question.
You bet. Any other questions on the premise ID process or anything like that?
There's none in the chat. Oh, there you go.
This
Sorry.
is Ben Conan from the Department of Ag here in Honolulu. Suppose that, just like as an NFL game, it's the second person that hit the opponent that gets caught by the referee. So suppose that it's a contamination that the other pig had. The one who died got it from another pig. And if you trace that pig that is dead, it's not going to go to where it came from, because you got it from another pig, in the group. So how do you trace that?
I think what you're saying is that how do we trace? So if you're not the first, if you're not the index case, and
Yeah.
that's really where where the holy grail is that they would have the individual ID, the RFID, the 15-digit number that targets that pig. It is that pig that is, and then what it takes, though, is it's one thing to have the tag. It's another thing that if people basically source verify or scan those, or record those and record movements. Okay. So that'll be another piece along the way. That's part of this big U.S. SHIP program, is that people have to be able to demonstrate that they can record the movements. So it's really no difference than if a dairy cow up here can test positive for tuberculosis. Her individual ID there's a whole trace back process. That is more difficult. Good point with the premise ID. If it's just a premise ID, then that just tells you where that pig was, originally. If it's an adult animal 6 years old, maybe it's changed hands and moved around. But that being said, that's where our really push first is for individual ID, like what we have in cattle on sows. Because then the breeding stock may change hands, but at the same time, we can track her much better with an individual ID. I don't know if that answers the question, or if
Yeah, yeah, you get it. Yeah, but it's a challenge. I just what pop out in my mind, because
yeah,
one death doesn't mean that it came from absolutely from the farm.
There was one question in the chat. I'm not sure. This might be a question for Dr. Heskett. He might have an answer. But is there an estimated time frame for approval of the pin forms?
It should be, well, if we do it So I'm not sure how a farm owner, if they do it, but if we try to create a PIN and the address is correct and is verified within the system, I will get the number fairly instantaneously. If the address isn't verified by the system in there and they need more information, it could take a couple days. I don't know what like I said, I'm not sure what the delay would be for a farm that's not going through our office.
And then the question before that was the deadline to have it completed by. It was more just that this is the first step for the other programs that we're trying to do as well with the ship and the secure pork supply. Correct? They need this for those other two, is my understanding. Yes.
Yes, that's
Tom and
correct.
Millie. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're dead on there. Is it's you actually don't have a true deadline. What it is that when we do our field demonstrations or and our live classroom situations this spring, we'll be going through and repeating a lot of this. Certainly, there's a lot of people hopefully that will pull into us that aren't on the call, get some interest there. But at the same time, the sooner that you go ahead, I mean, you can go ahead and roll anytime. And then you're just one step ahead as we continue to go through these pieces and processes. And there may be some of the things that we have to do finalization at the farm in the spring, but the sooner you get enrolled, the better. Just from the standpoint of being one step ahead so that you're ready for the next step.
I don't see any other questions in the chat, but I do want to say that I shared the link for anybody who wanted to participate as a producer in the project. If anybody, some folks are having trouble accessing the form, and if you are and you're not able to get to it, please let me know because I'll send you a PDF of it as well. And it's mainly for us to gather your information so that when we get to the point where we're ready to do the in-person stuff, that we can get into contact with everyone for that planning process.
Yeah. And then below where you put the link, I also put the link again in a abbreviated version along with the Hawaii.gov email to email the completed PDF form, and then Yoon's email to CC on, and then a subject line that you can copy and paste in. And that's just because we're trying to streamline things for you guys so that it is a little bit easier all the way through so that we can all keep track as we go through.
Yoon also dropped a link in the chat for our demographic form, which is more part of just our reporting for the webinar that we're doing today. And if there any other questions regarding the PIN form? I don't see.
I think we have a couple questions in the Q&A. What are the downsides for not registering? That would be one of them.
I would say that the probably the simplest downside is that it's really the first step, is if you're not a PIN, then you really can't be in the SHIP program. You really can't be a part of a lot of the other enrollment. Now, if you're not interested, then there's no downside other than again going back to it with African swine fever, for example. So if African swine fever would ever arrive on the islands and you're not enrolled and hence have a PIN number, then basically you will have. I could be wrong, Travis, but I'm assuming that there's no indemnity for people that aren't enrolled.
Yeah, sorry, Tom. I'm not 100%. I don't know that one.
Yeah, I can look into that a little bit, but and then the other part is the downside is by not having an identification, the whole goal of it is to be able to do trace back and be able to try to get back to the root of the cause. Whenever I have a health break, which granted I'm always dealing currently with domestic health breaks, but when we have a health break, one of the most frustrating things that bothers me is if we don't figure out what happened. So how can I help my producer? How can I help other producers in the area? How can I help the industry as a whole? Because ultimately, we rely on each other a lot, to number one, be transparent, number two, have a to strive for quality care, through the PQA program and other things. So by not having an identifier, we take gives us a risk that we miss an opportunity to add another clue to how disease processes work, and or to stop it, sooner than later. I mean, I think that's really the ultimate probably downside is it's really developed mainly to be able to do a quick surveillance or trace back or get to the problem quicker, and to come out with some solutions. Again, going back to disease outbreaks that we have up here is if I can use that information to be able to figure out and help a producer understand how they contracted a disease, or if that prevents another producer from breaking with the disease, that's pretty valuable.
Yeah, we have a comment here. I think it's very, very valuable. This comment is kind of this project is also part of our Kuleana as a farmer, producer, and for the public, like referring what you, Dr. Petsney, you were saying that it may be would be worth it to share a little bit of experience what happened in the past in the west side of Oahu. But if we have a pig and our neighbor wants to buy it to start breeding, and then we don't know it's carrying a disease, and then that pig goes somewhere else, and that pig goes somewhere else. So in just a short amount of time, we can start spreading certain diseases that, it will impact the whole herd and the breeding programs and all these farms. So I think it's a really good point from Dr. Kim Kusuma that is part of our Kuleana too.
Yeah, impact the whole island. I also just texted Dr. V about the indemnity that we were discussing, and she said that no, they would have to get a PIN number at that point. So it sounds like if we did get hit with African swine fever and you had pigs dying on your farm, and you did not have a PIN number, you would not get any indemnity, and you would have to be assigned a PIN at that point to receive any of that. So you are correct with that, Tom.
Even a broken watch is right twice a day.
And I guess another comment from the Q&A is like, yeah, it's kind of like it's shared across some producers. That's one of the few reasons um, we don't want to be known. That's what it was saying, too.
And that's real, Yoon, because we've gone through that up here. Is people, I mean, actually, some people are embarrassed. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got this disease. And they don't want to let people know. And that's truly where the veterinarian fits in, is to help people understand that, hey, the fact everybody at some point, or I shouldn't say everybody, but it's very common that we contract diseases. What's worse is if we don't learn from that, or if we're not good neighbors, and warn people that, hey, I have a problem going on. So they usually let me do it. I make sure that when we find out that we had a PRRS break or a PED break or a flu break or whatever, especially the reportable diseases like PRRS and PED, is we'll have the conversation. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the plan for at this point in time. Now we need to let the neighbors know, and usually they'll ask me just to do it. And so it's become much easier up here because once you reciprocate and get something in return, and get somebody telling you that they had the problem, it just becomes a lot easier. And so, not that it's a painful process, basically, saying, hey, I've got this issue going on, but we've now learned that we really have to communicate that very, very quickly.
And just adding to that, we're kind of like looking at what happened, if the diseases and all this that we've been discussing for the this webinar, but also another perspective to look at. If you get all this PIN and you're registered and you're tested, you become a trusted source for other producers. You become a kind of example and a leader in the industry that, if there can be some like movement of pigs with safety and biosecurity. So also we see it in the other side. It's beneficial as well. Yeah, I don't see any more questions or comments. I don't know. Anyone else? Melee.
There is, I think, one more question. What percent of the known 5,500 sows in our state is on PIN? I don't know that we know that.
We also
so.
wouldn't know the sows because we don't actually know the individual animals. We just know the premises. We don't know the number of animals.
I would guess that that's a state record, as far as how many premises are registered within the state. Maybe we could ask for that info. Just that'd be a good follow-up. That's interesting. That'd be interesting to know just how much work we have to do.
Yeah. The next webinar series is going to be part 3 on October 15th, same time again. And I put the link for the registration for that Zoom in the chat as well. And we're going to be talking about a secure pork supply plan and how you build that.
And one quick question here that we have. Someone put it in the chat. I use tags on my sows. So then the question is, should I start ordering my PIN tags? Or what are you guys' recommendations?
Yeah, so what we see up here that we've gone to. So for in the US mainland, very, very few sows don't go through a federally inspected marketplace. So the packers up here actually require it now. So if you don't have a sow that at least has in her ear that premise ID number, they're not supposed to take the pigs. So it's really pushed things along. So now what the majority of producers here have done, because they don't want a tag for this and a tag for that and a tag for this, and now the sow has 4 tags in her ears, and which one's which, and which one do I have to replace. So what you can order now is a premise ID panel tag. So it's just probably an inch or an inch by, or well, it'll be more than an inch, be 2 inches by 3 inches or something like that. But anyway, it's basically like we call it a panel or a rectangle tag for the sow's ear. And what that can have on it is you have to order them plenty ahead of time, though. It takes sometimes 8 to 12 weeks to get them because they actually have to print your information on the tags. So it would have a USDA shield. That's official identification if it has a USDA shield. It'll have the premise ID number. And then you can either order them and say, hey, I want them numbered below the premise ID number or above the premise ID number. I want them numbered from 26 to 50. Or most of our producers will order a blank tag because they have their own kind of numbering system, or they want a blank tag in case they're replacing a tag. And so they'll use the really good tag markers and they'll write the numbers on. So you kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone. You get your premise identification number along with an identification that you use either for your record keeping or so forth at the farm. Now, what wouldn't be a bad next step too, which is very common here with our breeding stock, is we put an alternative tag in the other ear. So if remember, we're largely in farms that are 2,500 sows, 5,000 sows. It's harder to say, oh, that's Josie and that's Mary and that's Sweet Pea, and remember it. And so if they lose a tag and it's the only tag they have, then they have no idea how to match that sow up. And so they'll commonly put in an alternative tag, which could be the RFID or something like that to be used, that they have as a reference so that if they lose one tag, they know what the other tag should be.
Just another comment too in the chat that Dr. Kuzuma said they were able to reunite a lost sheep using some official tags. So that's another good point that both Dr.
Oh,
Tom shared too. That having those tags, H2A was able to help find that sheep's owner. Very good. Well, I don't, and yeah, another comment that animals sold the owners didn't submit movement papers. So unfortunately, it's hard to find owners when you don't have those movement papers, but it does help to have identifications on those animals, in emergencies. Here we deal with wildfires and I'm sure everyone else does. And, with our lava and volcanic activity that we had some emergencies from. So having some type of ID is important. I mean, they do it in cattle. We do it with the cattle too at our station, having double, three different forms of ID on them, two tags as well as tattooing. So I think that's a good way to keep track of everybody. Yoon, do you see? I don't see any other questions in our Q&A or in our chat.
No, I think that was all the questions. Really good questions and comments. Thank you all.
Yeah. Anything else from our two other project team members here that you guys want to share before we close off?
I guess it depends if anybody, I know there was a lot of questions last time about some specific biosecurity. What is African swine fever? What I might do is if everybody has just a few minutes, if I share my screen, I can show you just some resources that are out there. Would that be helpful?
Yes, I think so.
That
Okay, let
sounds
me see.
great.
The one thing is, with the power of what we have today at our hands, with the internet and so forth, used to have to go to the library to find this stuff, but it's now commonplace to put these things out as brochures, put them on websites and so forth. And there's really a tremendous amount of material out there to help pork producers, not just for this biosecurity stuff, not just for the foreign animal disease things, but also for just general good practices, feeding, square footages, those types of things that are useful. And this one, I actually had never been on this site before. I was just wanting to find out what else was out there. And this actually comes out of the College of Vet Med at Illinois. And so here's a nice flyer that they have. You can print it off in PDF form on a one-page document, and it's called "Protect Your Farm Against African Swine Fever." It addresses what is ASF as far as it's a high consequential viral disease. It's a foreign animal disease, and currently we don't have it here. Why should we be worried about it? Largely because it's not very far away from at least from the mainland. It's on the other side of the North American continent than Hawaii. But basically, it's gotten into some of the islands that aren't too far from Florida, actually. And so far, it's been contained, but it's a pretty slow process of cleaning up where they don't have a lot of resources. And then the big reason why would be just from a mortality standpoint, the devastating losses that it has to an industry. And we also have the threat of losing export trade to other countries if we have ASF in the United States. Excuse me. How it's transmitted, a lot of different ways, actually. The how is ASF transmitted? I mean, it can be direct contact. The number one biosecurity is the fastest way to get a pig disease is to be exposed to an infected pig. So, and certainly the wild boars can carry this. It has a similar mortality on them. And so you can also indirectly transport it by being exposed to a pig that's infected, and maybe getting it on your hands or on your boots or on your whatever, because remember, they don't die right away. It takes a little while. And so you could be exposed to that or in their manure or whatever. And if we don't do a good job of cleaning up, we can carry that on ourselves or on the equipment that we take from place to place. Visitors from traveling countries are a concern with African swine fever, especially the one that's been the biggest focused anywhere that I talk to in the world about African swine fever and how they think they got it. They really keep focusing towards infected pork products. So it's just the thought process. I'm driving down the road. I got some sausage in Italy. Believe it or not, Italy has African swine fever. And I bought some sausage and I'm driving along and I throw it out the window because I didn't quite eat it all. I don't like the end or whatever. Well, if there's wild pigs in that area and at some point they come along and they find that food, then next thing you know, you've now passed that to another pig, in potentially in another country. So the food products is a really big target. What can I do to protect? This is large. This bottom left section is largely based on just kind of vague, or not vague, but very more general biosecurity. There is no vaccination. Now you'll hear about vaccines for ASF. There's a lot of controversy. Some of them have done what we really fear, which is to revert to virulence, which means that they were processed as a vaccine to help, and all of a sudden it became actually a wild type virus that can infect pigs and kill them. So there's been a lot of speculation around the vaccine. There's many strains of it, and so it's been tough to really decide if vaccines can work or not. So there's kind of a list here of different things like controlling your rodents, controlling your ticks. Just like us, if a rodent goes and it's feeding on or it's walking over a dead carcass or around pigs that have ASF, and then some rats in particular will travel quite long distances if they run out of their food source or for general scavenging, and then all of a sudden you can pass it to the next farm. So controlling those pests, quarantining animals when you buy animals in, you again, the fastest way to get and the most robust way to get a new pig disease is to buy infected pigs or to get exposure to those pigs. Cleaning up our equipment. On this particular one, I'm not sure how old this one is, but it actually says do not permit visitors with a history of international travel within 90 days. That in general has shrunk down immensely. What the general rule is if I travel to Europe and I go to a ASF infected country, especially if I've been around pigs, but truthfully, we've policed it to we want 5 nights away from those pigs, which is about 4 full days. And likely, if you do the right things, it doesn't take that much. But that's just been the general rule that's been adapted from when this sheet was put out. There's a contact information of what I do. In this particular case, that's the state of Illinois number. In our case, in Hawaii, it would be the state of Hawaii's number, or your local, whoever your assistant or full-fledged state veterinarian is. And when should I suspect it? So this is my big warning sign, is if you look at these symptoms of what a pig with ASF may or may not look like, they have high fevers, they can die suddenly, they don't like to eat very much because they're sick, they're having trouble breathing and coughing, they might have diarrhea, a pregnant sow might abort, you get the red blotchy skin like a sick pig gets, and they appear weak. Well, you take those, and that describes a lot of other diseases too. So the big trick here is that being on the alert and realizing that it's a slow one. Once a pig's infected, it still takes 6 to 13 days for the onset of the symptoms, and then but then some pigs will die suddenly without any showing symptoms. So this is a tough one, and why we really want this identification at the farm level to be able to trace back and be able to pin these down as quickly as we can. Now, I'm not sure, but I think just going through that little sheet, did that raise some questions?
Yes, indeed. We have a couple questions here. One of the questions here in the Q&A is, I guess it's referring other diseases. Is like I thought wild pigs can be carriers and don't die. Is it true?
No, that's actually not true. Um, there are types of pigs. If I remember right, it's the warthog that's in Africa, that can be a symptomatic carrier or asymptomatic carrier. But the true wild pigs, they will die of it. I think I talked last time. They because that's one of the things that they really want is if you're in an area where that has a lot of feral pigs and you just find open ones out in the open and they don't have an arrow in them, they don't have dog bites on them like they were hunted, or that's maybe the reason they died. But if you just flat out find them dead, we want to be able to test those, for African swine fever. And then I think I told last time was the hardiness of this virus in tissues is a really long time. That they've been able to recover virus from the bone marrow of a dead wild pig, over a year after it had died. So pretty wild how that can happen. But no, that wild pigs can die of it as well. It kind of goes back. Is Gary's on? Because I don't want to talk about him if he's not on. But it's not bad, Gary. But it kind of goes to your point. We need to build resiliency in pigs. We need to build resiliency in people to be able to handle diseases in general. But there are those ones that just flat out are just killers, and it's unfortunate, but we have those nasty viruses over the years, those nasty bacteria over the years. They're PRRS, not necessarily that way. It can kill pigs, and it does. But the more resilience and the other things that you've done to build in, to making them more resilient, is true. But then we get these certain diseases like ASF, and they're just flat out killers.
It's more in the chat. We have a couple comments from uh, one of them is like, we have some travel to Asia back and forth, and we're unsure or unknown of the biosecurity guidelines, internationally. So that could be a leakage, like a fomite that you were mentioning last webinar.
Yeah, and we always hope that there's throughout the world, that at the airports that there's signage. I have seen them, and actually when I went to South America, came off the plane, it was kind of tucked over in the corner, but there was signage about being careful about African swine fever. In the U.S., I honestly rarely see it. I see it, but it's there. It's unfortunate, but yeah, the international travel can be a link. Um, I know some of my fellow vets that go to China quite a bit to consult. They actually, once they're there, or they'll pack extra. They'll go to Walmart or somewhere cheap to buy just kind of clothes that they wear, and basically they leave them behind and don't wear them back home. They have one set that they keep pristine and clean to wear home, but most of their clothes they'll actually just leave them there. So again, Kim, it comes back to education, helping people understand. The hard part is building belief, and helping them understand that these things are real. And then the third piece is really the accountability piece. Once we know and once we believe that, I mean, there's a lot of things I know and there's a lot of things I believe, but I'm not always very good at following it, like the way I eat. And so we have to have accountability on these things too. One other comment I see there too is on the swill feeding. That one's a little bit of a battle in the U.S. ship, and I think it'll get fought in time. But producers up here, there are swill feeders up here too. They're fewer and farther between them. But there's a big debate on is it right to not allow them to be in the ship program, and or not? Should that be a regulation of that? So that one will be one that we continue to fight. You're right. It's a prime source of food for the pigs down there. Certainly want to make sure that we are cooking food like what we should, regardless of any program that it requires certain things. We just want to keep our pigs healthy. That's really the goal, is let's keep the pigs healthy.
Just out of curiosity, Tom, and you might not know the answer to this, are there a wide variety of grain manufacturers and distributors of pig feed, or are there just a couple?
If you look at the big companies, the Cargills of the world, and so forth. I mean, those are not. I mean, there's plenty there, but there's lots of nutrition companies. And then certainly as you work your way down from that, Gabby, the actual, the actual producers of the grain, the processors of it that send it out finally on the truck to go to the farm, there's, thousands of them, because you can only drive so far. And so it's a little bit of a pyramid. Those that are kind of in the game are, as far as the big picture of it, are fewer. And then you kind of go down to the companies that then take that food source and of corns and whatnot, but there's still tons and tons of private farmers too. So really it's a little bit like cattle up here. Is the cattle really hasn't become a confinement deal as much, to the degree that swine and poultry have, largely because the vast majority of cattle still eat grass. Now, you get to the feedlot part, there's concentration, and confinement there, but as far as the cows themselves, it's just different. I mean, you can't, it's hard to own so many, you know, thousands and thousands of cows. People do, but you have to have the land to go with them. So there's just continuing to be plenty of people, that have one or two cows, or maybe they have 30, or maybe they have 50. And I think the grain thing's the same way. I mean, it becomes a land thing. The confinement of pigs and in feedlots and all that has shrunk the land that it takes, to hold them. That's harder when it comes to grains and cows, things that have to be out and take land space. Anything else on that, or can I move on to just a couple more?
I think you're good to move on. I don't see
Okay.
anything else.
I'll give you a broad, this was also on the same site, the biosecurity checklist. Remember, these are broad. We tailor these. Every farm tends to tailor them to themselves and what they're practically able to do, what their conditions are, et cetera. But it's just kind of nice, broad, general guidelines. So I can probably send these as a link later. But just kind of marking access points with signs. Do people that are casual passersby or whatnot, do they know, hey, this is serious? I don't want you in with my pigs, because we have a process to get in. So doesn't keep the bad people out, but it keeps the good people out. Defining certain areas where you want people to park, restricting the entry. Not everybody should just be able to come into your farm necessarily. You want them to basically let you know. You want to be able to be inquisitive of if they've been on another farm that day, etc. Maintaining a logbook of those that do come and visit. And then again, that's a trace back. Every farm that I go into, I sign a logbook that says, here's who I am, here's why I was here, here's the last time I was around other pigs, on what date. So that way we have a trace back in the case that we have a break. Clean dirty lines is a big one that we'll talk about with the SPS program, with basically what we call lines of separation. And those lines of separation are really to indicate that, hey, I need an intervention at this point. Up here, it's a lot of showers. So I need an intervention to get myself into the farm, and in that case, it's a shower. Although some of our farms, it might just be a change of clothes, or it might be disinfect my boots. But that's just a good definite premise to work on. Restrict entry of pork products onto the farm. So what we don't allow is raw pork for sure into the farms for like meals. Like if a few of the farms have bigger offices and they might be able to have a little fry cooker or a stove or something like that. We don't allow the raw pork in because it's been shown before that the juice in there, a PRRS positive pig has lots of PRRS in its tissues. It gets butchered, it gets quickly chilled and frozen and packaged. And when you rethaw that can be alive for some time later. Cleaning and disinfecting equipment. Really kind of the big thing with it, if you really look through this checklist, is the best way to make a biosecurity program in my mind starts with, what do I bring into my farm? What do I take out of my farm? And how in the process of going in and taking out, do I make sure that I don't bring something new to my pigs? And then to get more specific, this again, every farm will have a little bit different based on what their facility. This one was designed for one that does have a shower, so it just helps people having a sign like that as they come into the farm, especially for visitors, just to give them another look at it. We like videos and we like pictures, but one place we're not allowed to do that is in the shower. So we don't have that resource. So we try to describe it as best that we can and describe the movements as best as we can. Another very specific one would be in and around loading and unloading pigs, making sure that we don't risk problems. So when I was in Guyana, and I know certainly it probably happens in Hawaii a lot too, but when I was in Guyana, they would have people that, hey, I need 6 pigs. And so they would just drive, and they knew where the pig people were, and they'd drive up to their house. Hey, you got any pigs for sale? Well, I got one that meets your criteria. So they'll load that pig up in there. Well, then that guy would then drive down the road and you go to the next one. So what can happen is, again, it's that I picked up a disease here. Now it's getting to here, and now it's getting to here. And by the time I get my 6th pig, I might have infected a couple different places. And so having a means by which, again, have a line of separation so that we have a clean and a dirty side of which we don't cross. And then you'll see here in the back of that trailer, it says unidirectional pig flow or unidirectional flow, only on, not back off. So we really focus when we're loading trucks that you have to assume there's something dirty on that truck. And so you want to make sure you only handle enough pigs that you can keep from turning back on you. And granted, there's always the brutal cull sow that does, but we're trying to again not let perfection get in the way of progress. So the more pigs we can load going directly out and not coming back in the farm, the better off we are. So there's lots of resources. I'll try to start making a list of those, whether it's the pork checkoff site, whether it's the secure pork site, different ones that are out there. So that people have those resources. There's so much information out there, and each of it's presented a little bit different and might meet your needs better.
Thank you, Dr. Tom. I don't see you. And do you have any other questions? I don't see any others in the chat.
No, I think it's no question, but it's a really good information to share, with biosecurity. Those little details can, make a difference. Keep our pigs protected.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Look forward to seeing everyone and good conversations next week.